Morning, Arab.
Hey, very good morning. I think most of us not joined. I will just give a few more minutes.
என்ன வேணும் போன் கிடையாது உனக்கு போன் யாருமா
We'll start. Okay. Hey, so everyone has dual machines with you now, so at least for us to run this different tasks to run. Like for example, I was showing you, we need one machine for build, one machine for Sonar, and one machine for Nexus, so that we can do the same thing as a pipeline, connect to all these different machines and check. Does everyone have machines? At least 2 or 3 machines with you? Yes, no. So does everyone has 2 or 3 machines with you guys? No? Yes. Now, what about others? Okay, I don't see any others replying. Okay, so what I'll do, probably we'll do it at the end. So, but at least for today, then what we will do, we'll try to see how we can set up a pipeline using which we can use the Jenkins pipeline or the Ruby-based declarative code to set up a pipeline to do a checkout and to do a build, and post the build, we'll try to see how do we generate an image and push that image. Okay, so at least if you don't have machines for other things. So once you get it, we'll just come back and update the pipeline. All right. So just go back. What did we saw yesterday was we started writing a pipeline wherein what we did is we just wrote our first stage in the pipeline, which will just check out the code from a particular repository, right? Now, here, what happens is many at a times, Jenkins triggers a build on a need basis or whenever there is a commit. That is what we have seen, right? Now, what if you want to make sure that you want to trigger this only based on a particular check-in, but not that Jenkins should be connecting very frequently to the repo. So what I'm trying to tell is, if you try to use the earlier method of poll SEM, then Jenkins will try to connect to GitLab or whatever the repository you have, and what is the frequency that you have to keep. Suppose if I know that in my company there are going to be frequent check-ins, then I'm going to use Jenkins to connect at least every 5 minutes or every 2-3 minutes to connect to GitLab. But that way, every time if you keep connecting, then there will be a lot of load on the Jenkins master. So that's when there is another way of triggering your Jenkins job, that is through a webhook method. So what do you mean by a webhook method? So all the repository manager tools that you take has an option called as webhook, in which we can invoke the job based on a check-in directly from the central repo. So what I'm saying is, your central repository manager like GitLab can automatically call a Jenkins job whenever there is a change or whenever there is a new commit that has been submitted. Okay. Now to do that, now we have this pipeline, but like I said, I want this pipeline to be triggered by GitLab. So I don't want to manually trigger, or we don't want Jenkins to connect to GitLab. So for this, the first step that we have to do is we need to set up a webhook. Now to set up a webhook, what we have to do is first we have to go back and make sure that in our Jenkins we have the plugin for GitLab. Okay, so this way, let me connect to Jenkins. So try to do it along with me. So first thing what we need now is since GitLab being the central repository manager for us, so I'm going to use GitLab for triggering a webhook. For that, I need to install a plugin. So to install any new plugin, we will go to Manage Jenkins, Manage Plugins, and see whether you have already installed GitLab. If not, you are going to install the plugin for GitLab. So here, search for GitLab, and you should see this option. So go ahead and install and restart Jenkins. Okay. So you can enable this option also. So wait until Jenkins downloads the plugin, and once it is done, it will automatically go ahead and restart. Okay. So can everyone try doing the same thing now along with me so that we can set up the pipeline faster? So go ahead and install the plugin, that is GitLab, and restart Jenkins. Okay, let me know if you have installed the plugin. Okay, good. So now, so we have the plugin available. So what is the next thing that we have to do? So we have to now tell Jenkins on where is the GitLab available and how Jenkins can connect to GitLab. So this is where we are going to use a credential. For that, we have to generate a token. Okay. Same way, when a webhook is triggered from GitLab, Jenkins should be able to allow that connection. Okay. So once you have installed the plugin, next step, what you do is go back to your GitLab, and in the GitLab, on the right hand side, you will see your user details. Okay. So go to preferences, and on the left panel, you should be seeing access token. Okay. So go to user preferences, and then on the left hand side, you should go to access token. So now generate an access token here. Now, if you already have access token, you should see something like that. So in your case, there should be no access token available. So now we are going to generate a token to allow the communication between the Jenkins and the GitLab, because when we call webhook, there is going to be API calls that we will be doing. So there, let's just say demo. I'm just giving a name, and then you can set up an expiry date until when you want. Okay, now I can just say I want to just put it for 2-3 days, and then what kind of access do you want this token to have? Now, for us, we need to have the complete API access for the webhook. At the same time, what I need is, I don't need any write operation. So I'll just say read repository, so that anytime when a check-in happens, Jenkins will be triggered through the webhook, and Jenkins can read the information about the repository available in GitLab. So all I need is these two, and come down and go ahead and create a token. Okay. Now, once this token is generated, once you refresh, this will not be there. So make sure you copy this or don't refresh this page for some time. Okay. So quickly, can you generate this token now? So it's better you keep the token somewhere. So I'll just copy paste it for some time. GitLab preferences, and on the left line, use personal token and choose API and read repository. Only these two can generate a token. Okay. Others? So now, once you have the token, right, what we have to do is we have to add that to Jenkins. So this is where go back to Jenkins, and in the Jenkins, what we have to do is create a credential for this token. So for that, go to Manage Jenkins and go to Manage Credentials. Okay. And over here, there are certain tokens that we have already added. Now for GitLab, we have to add a new one. So click on this global and add credentials. Okay. Now when we are adding the credentials, unlike the other ones, now here you need to use the GitLab API, because only when you install the plugin, you will get this option. So go ahead and give this, and then it's going to ask you what is the token. So this is where whatever the GitLab token that you just copied or created, you just paste it, and then give some ID for reference. Okay, so I will just say GitLab description and say GitLab. So what we have done, so we have given the credentials of GitLab to Jenkins. So that is what we have done. However, we haven't told Jenkins on where is the exact GitLab available, right? So for any such global definition, you should go to configure system. So go to dashboard, manage Jenkins, and configure system. So once you have given the credentials, so go to configure system, and here just search for GitLab. So since GitLab is a common URL for different jobs, so you're going to give this. Now for that, just go back and get the URL of GitLab and give it. But make sure you remove this option for the project. Okay, and then okay, so this is just a name, so we'll just call it as the URL. Okay, and then what is the credential that you want to give? And this is where we have the GitLab API token just now we added, so you can go ahead and give this. Okay, and to cross check whether Jenkins is able to connect, you can just do a test connection. So it says success. That means using the token what we have generated, Jenkins is able to connect to this GitLab instance what we have given. Okay. So this is one part what we have done. So we installed the GitLab plugin, generated the GitLab token, and we have added it to the Jenkins as the GitLab API credential, and that we have given as a reference. Okay. And before I proceed further, can you quickly try to set this and see whether with the token what you have generated, you are able to allow Jenkins to connect? So quickly try this. this. Okay, everyone has tried. Okay, so now what we have to do is, so we have Jenkins connecting to GitLab using the token, but what we have to do now is we need to create a webhook. Okay, and that webhook we need to create from the specific project. So now, wherever the project you have, so you should go to that particular project. Okay, now, for example, project that what we had was this. Okay, this one, Maven build, and this is where we had these folders which we cloned and did the build. So now under this, what you have to do is create a webhook, because for this specific project, whenever a check-in happens, we need to call our Jenkins job. So that way, go ahead and go to the settings of the project. Okay, now I've made it as public, so all of you can directly access this. If not, just go to this URL. Now, in case if you're not able to access, it's fine. You can create a dummy GitLab project and you can try setting it up. Okay, so whatever is easy for you. Either if you can access this, it should be good. If not, you can just create your own dummy project in GitLab. And for that, you just try to see how the trigger will happen. Okay. Now, over this, go to settings. Okay. And in the settings, you should see webhook. So this is project specific. So click on the webhook. Now here you have to give the Jenkins job URL to which this GitLab project should call through the webhook. So for that, take your Jenkins job, and this is the URL of your job. So take this. Okay. Now make a note of what I'm saying here. So when you're trying to give the URL of the job, so you should give the Jenkins URL colon 8080 slash project slash the name of the project. So what is the name of the project we have? It is CI pipeline. Okay. So the only thing is, it is not job slash CI pipeline. You just change it to project slash CI pipeline. Okay. And this should be your URL. And make sure you don't have any slashes at the end. So go back to webhook and give this URL. Okay. So from this job, I should be able to trigger this particular Jenkins job whenever a check-in happens to the project. Now, so what are the events for which GitLab should be calling Jenkins? So that we have to give. Now for this, you enable push event. So that means anytime in this repo, whenever a new check-in or a push happens, GitLab will call the above Jenkins URL. So that is what we are trying to tell. So make sure the push event is enabled, and then just scroll down and remove this enable SSL verification. Okay, and click on add webhook. So once you have added a webhook, if you come down, you should see that there is a webhook available. Now to quickly cross check this, you can click on test and go to push event. Okay, and just click on push and see whether GitLab is able to communicate to the Jenkins. That means, is GitLab able to trigger the webhook? So you can see that it has happened. And over here, it says that now you are able to communicate from GitLab to Jenkins. So this is success. All right. Now, this is just to tell that GitLab can trigger a Jenkins job based on a push event. But however, Jenkins should be receiving this from GitLab. So that is where the second half of what we have to do over this is, Go back to your Jenkins job, and in the Jenkins job, if you go to configure, so you have the build triggers. So in this, since you have installed a GitLab plugin, you should get this option. So enable this, and over here, for what are the push that is coming from the GitLab webhook, you want this job to be triggered. So I don't want to trigger this for a merge, but I want to trigger it only for a push event. Then you can just go ahead and enable only the push event. Okay. And once all this thing is done, just come down and save or apply. So what we are doing, we created a webhook and we told which is the Jenkins jobs to trigger. And in the Jenkins job, we are allowing the trigger type, because who is going to trigger this? The webhook from GitLab. So that is where we are enabling this. And now what we can do is to test if any check-in happens, you should see that this build should get triggered. So if I go back and test this job once again, push event, your webhook has triggered the Jenkins, and if you come down here quickly and if you refresh, you can see there is a job triggered. So that way, anytime if a check-in happens to this repo, the GitLab webhook will automatically call the Jenkins job. Okay. Now just to show you directly again, I'll go to this project and I'll do a dummy check-in here. I'll edit this file. Okay, so I'll just add a small comment, that's all. And I'm going to do check-in. Okay, so there's a check-in. So because of that, if you come back and you just wait, you can see as soon as a check-in happened, the webhook from GitLab triggered the job and you got your third job triggered because there was a check-in. So this is how, when you say a pipeline in Jenkins, you can trigger it on scheduled basis, on need basis, or you can poll SEM. If not, the better way is allow a webhook like GitHub or GitLab to trigger the Jenkins job whenever there is a new check-in available, so that Jenkins performance will always be optimal. All right. So can you quickly try this now and see whether you are able to trigger your pipeline for any check-in? Now, preferably, if everyone are using the same project, I will say quickly create a dummy project in GitLab and try to set up a book and see how you are able to reach it. So can you try this?
Adam, faces machine. Join here.
Are you doing a VPN? Can you just disconnect the VPN and try?
No, I'm not using VPN. I'm using local VMs.
No, when it says URL is blocked, it's completely a network issue. So can you check? Are you under any proxy or network?
No.
Hi Adam, can you please show me that webhook configuration page?
Yeah. Go to the job or the project and come down on the left panel on settings and click on the books.
After that page only, where we will give a URL.
Yeah, go to webhook.
Can you show once again?
Go to the project, go to settings, and in the settings, click on webhook. And when you click on webhook, you will get this page. So in this page, give the URL, choose push event, and come down and remove this SSL certification and add webhook.
Yeah, thanks Adam.
Under the project, which project you are checking? If you don't have access to this, can you create a new project and see? Which URL you are talking? If GitLab is not available, then I think you have to check if you are in any network, you have to remove. If not, try to create a new project and try.
Adam, we are all using local VMs. I believe that's the issue.
Local errand get.
Local VMs. We have Oracle VM.
What do you say in that local VMs you are not able to connect to GitLab, is it?
Yes.
Okay. But then it will be a problem. Okay, I'm not sure. Yeah, probably that could be a problem. Your laptop network and this is different. So maybe that reason it's blocking. Okay, anyway, probably if you have any other machine outside, you can just try that. But yeah, if it's blocking, we can't do anything. Okay, but at least just make sure if you have any other Jenkins outside the VM, if it's working, it should be fine. So coming back, so what we have seen so far is how does your pipeline get triggered, right? So rather than running the pipeline on need basis, so what we were trying to see, so whenever there is a check-in, GitLab will try to trigger the webhook, and that webhook will call the Jenkins job, and you will be able to run this automatically. So this way, for every push someone does to your repository, this Jenkins job will be triggered. And in that, what we have seen is the very first stage where what you have to do is check out the code. Okay. But sometimes, even before you go into your checkout, okay, or pretty much, let's say after the checkout, now you want to do a build. But before you do the build, you want to validate whether you really need a build or not. So how do you do it? Now, let's say, for example, the dummy check-in that I did now. So where did I do? If you actually see, I checked in a file called readme file. Okay, and that file was somewhere outside these project folders. Now, if I modify this file and check in, I will be getting a new commit ID and Jenkins will trigger. But I don't have to do compilation for this. This is because when I try to run a build, only if a file has been modified in any of the folder, I can go ahead and trigger the job, right? But unfortunately, when you have a webhook, what will happen? Wherever the check-in is being done to this project, GitLab will just call the Jenkins pipeline. But from the pipeline, we can control whether to run the stage or not to run the stage. Okay, so for that, what we have to do is set up a condition in which we'll try to see whether there was a check-in happened, and if that check-in is available in any of the folders, and only then we should proceed with further steps. Okay, so for that, what we have to do is, now let me just copy the content and show you. So first, let's take a stage, okay, and just make a note on what and all we are doing. So here, I'm trying to add a second stage. So I'm going to add a second stage. So here, I'm going to add a stage called pre-check. Okay, and what I'm doing here, once again, I'm saying it to run on a group of machine called demo. And the first thing that I'm doing here is applying a condition. And what is the condition saying? So the condition I'm saying is there is a plugin called change set. If you have installed GitLab, this would be part of it. So I'm trying to tell that find out whether the checkout that this stage did, there will be some commit ID, correct? Now, in that commit ID, it will have the details about what and all are the files which has been modified. So in that way, we are trying to find out in the recent checkout, whatever the change set or the commit ID that you have got, in that, is there a file or a folder modified inside this pattern? That is, under sample jar, is there something modified matching it, or is there something matching in sample bar? If any one of them is matching, then my condition will become true, and only then this stage will get executed. Okay, and in case if this change set doesn't match any of the folder, then this condition will be returning false, and because of that, whatever the steps I want to run will not at all get executed. In fact, the stage will be skipped. That is what we are trying to check. So this way, you can run a build or a stage or not, depending on whether there has been actually a file which is modified on a particular folder. But what is that I want to do here? So this is where I want to set up an environment variable called build me. Okay. Now, when I should be setting this environment variable called build me, only if there is a change in any of the folder. Okay. If it is not there, I don't want to set this environment variable. Why you need, I'll tell it. But how am I setting? So this is where, when we were seeing the pipeline, we saw how do we set up an environment variable on the top level. But within the steps, how are you going to set up? So that is where we are going to use a combination of the scripted pipeline along with declarative. And that is where now within the steps, I am adding script block, and inside the script block, I'm saying env.buildme equal to s. So what will happen? Whenever this condition is true, Jenkins will run the stage and it will set a build me variable to s. So this is what I'm going to use for further next stages to decide whether to run them or not. So for that, whenever I run, if build me is enabled, then I know what are the next things to do. Now that will happen only if there is a change in any of this folder. Okay. And just to show you that, what I'll do, stage, I'll just show you a stage called build. So let's not worry what exactly it is going to do. But what I'll do now, I'll take the agent and I'll take the steps. Within the steps, I'll just say echo But now over here, we will give a condition. And what is that condition? The condition is if there is an environment variable called build me, and if the value of that is s, then run. And that is where we will go back and I'll get through this condition. Okay. So now here, if you see, we are telling if this stage has been executed, then there will be a build me variable setup. And if that environment variable is set, then I should run this build. Suppose if there is no change found in any of these folders in the recent check-in, then this stage will be skipped. And when this stage skips, your build me will not be set. The reason behind that, what will happen? This stage will also not get executed. So that's how only when you want all the other stages will run. If not, none of the stage will run. So let's just run this and see. So I'll go back to our job pipeline. And here. And put a new stage. These two stages will put. And let's run this one. So you can see the pre-check didn't run because the condition didn't match. And because of that, the build stage is also skipped. So that's where even when a check-in happens, when Jenkins does a checkout of the first, it takes the commit ID and it knows the details about what and all has been modified in this commit ID. So that's where when you run the stage called pre-check and try to set up this, it will clearly find out. And that is where we are again going back with the condition. And we are saying if there is a checking in any one of the folder, then it is good for me. If not, you're going to consider as skipped, and the next stage will also get skipped because of that. Okay. So try running this and find out how it is going to behave. And copy paste it here. I've pasted the pipeline. So just try it out. Meantime, just to show you, I'll change the pipeline wherein I will not give the condition. Okay. If I don't give the condition, what will happen? This will run and the build me variable will be set to S. Because of that, the next condition is true for this stage and the build stage will also run. Okay, so you can see this ran because it set up the variable, and next the condition is true. That's the reason it's going ahead with the build. So this is how you can choose whether the pipeline should run or not to run a particular stage. Yeah, I've just copy pasted it. Can you just quickly change that and try how it is evaluated?
Adam, Jekyll here, a small doubt.
Yes.
Suppose there is another stage I have for deployment, and do I need to have the condition and all the steps? Is there any other way?
No, I didn't get you. Come again.
So you are having a build stage, right? So similarly, I have another stage for a deployment. And
Yeah.
do I need to have that win condition in that stage too, or is there any other way I can return exit one in the pre-check and skip the remaining stages?
Okay, so this is where when we learned that, right, last week, if you do not give a condition, Jenkins will be by default running. Now, if you want to evaluate based on a condition, then you give. So if you don't give a condition, Jenkins will go ahead and just directly try to run. That's all. So you can have as many conditions as you want for every stage, but if there is no condition for a stage, Jenkins will just directly try to run. And if you want, you can use the same condition for different stages also.
Yeah, my question is, my question is, in that case, the conditions will be duplicate for all the remaining stages, right?
Yeah, for all the stages, you have to give condition. If you give the same condition, then the same will match everywhere. So if it is running one stage, then it will run all the stages. That is what we will do. But if you want, you can also have different conditions. So it's up to us to tell what condition. But yeah, same condition, you can give it to everything. others. Okay, others have completed. You want to take a break? We will see back again in 10 minutes. Take a break for 10 minutes. Is everyone back?
Adam, I have one doubt.
Yeah, go ahead.
In my project, I have many folder. If I have modify all the folder except one folder means I have to mention all the folder in the plan.
Yeah, it's more about the directory structure, but yes, except one, if you want to have all the others, then you have to update it again. That's correct. Now, what we saw was the pipeline when to trigger, right? Now, let's go ahead and run the actual build. Now, this is where what I have to first do is a couple of things. Now, if I go back to this pipeline, so here we just told we want to run the build. That's all. But if I exactly want to run the build, then this is where you need to go to that particular sample jar or sample var folder and do the build. Okay. But before that, what I also want to do is, okay, when you call Maven, sometimes you might have to run unit test or you might have to suppress unit test. So how do you manage both of them? Okay. So in those places, what we will do is we will try to first put a parameter, and if a parameter is being invoked for unit test, then we will run unit test in V1. If a user doesn't want, then we can disable the unit test. Okay. Now for this, the first thing what we will do is try to take a parameter. So when I say parameter, now let me take a string parameter. Okay. So just watch this. So once again, on the top level, I will set a new block called parameter, and there's going to be only one parameter called unit test, and it's going to be a Boolean parameter where I'm just saying enable or disable. Now what I want to do is, if this is enabled, I need to run the unit test as part of the compilation. If not, I should not be passing. So I'm using the parameters here. For this, if I go back to my build step, so this is where I want to put a condition inside our build script. Okay. So the steps what we have is where I want a condition. So the condition is not whether I want to trigger this stage or not. So that is where we are going to have this condition. But when I'm trying to run the step, at that time, once again, if you want to have a condition, in declarative way, we do not have a condition directly. So you have to once again use a scripted method. So in the script, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to set up a condition in which if the parameters.unit test is true, then I want to set a variable called unit string empty. And in case if you have disabled the unit test, then the unit string will become skip true. So that way, when you're calling Maven, if you say Maven package and this string, then Maven will skip the unit test. If you do not pass this, then Maven will be trying to call the unit test after compilation, unit test, and package. So that's where what I'm going to do now is by enabling this parameter, I will be setting it as empty. If user has disabled, that means I don't want to run unit test, then I will be adding this parameter. So that is where you can see when I'm running the command, I'm specifically going inside the folder called sample jar. And in this, I'm going to do a Maven package and followed by the string. Now, if user has enabled the unit string, this will be empty. So it will do Maven package and unit test will run. Suppose if the user has disabled the unit test string, then this string will be added and this will be appended. So when you run Maven inside this jar folder, you should see unit test has been skipped. Okay. The same way, I also want to build the jar, then I will be once again using the same dir block, wherein I'll go inside the sample var folder and I'll be running. So this is where you can see all those whatever we learned earlier. I'm just trying to put everything together as an example. Okay, so let's try running this. Let me just cross check whether it looks properly. This is for script. This steps. This is for stage. Yeah, everything's correct. Here, I'm just remove this condition. And we have the parameters available. So let's apply. It doesn't do show here the parameters, just do a dummy print once. Okay, so now we have this option. So it's just asking, do you want to enable unit test or not? So by default, I will enable. Then what will happen? In the pipeline, it will check out and it will pre-check. So I have no condition. So the environment variable build me will be set to S. And because of that, the build will also run, or the stage will run. However, when we are calling the stage, if you look at the log, then what is the command you have executed? You have just executed maven package. Okay, so there is no additional skip parameter. The same, now when I go ahead and disable this, then when you're calling in the build step, you should see that there is a skip unit test executed. You see, now because of that, when you expand the output, you should see wherever that unit test is executed, it will say nothing to test. Okay, test our script. So that's how what we can do is you can use parameters and you can plan how you want to run a stage. Okay, now let me just check in this file. You can try to download from this project and go back to this file. Yeah, just pull this file and try running it and see how by enabling a parameter, how do you set the variables here and how different builds will happen. And post the build has happened, if you want, you can pretty much go to that folder or the workspace. Okay, and you can see your jar and var generated. So we go to sample jar folder. Okay, and the jar file. Same way, if you go to the sample var, there's a target, and inside that there is a sample var that we have generated. Okay, so take these two things and cross check. So try running this and see how you can figure pipeline with different parameters and how accordingly the pipeline stage is behaving here. Just try running it. Have you tried it? Have you guys tried it? Am I audible? Has everyone tried? Okay, so what we saw now is how do we do a build, and out of the build, what we have done is we have a jar now this is where going back now for a QA or a production to consume. So basically, what we need then is so rather than going with the traditional method, what we're going to do is create a Docker image. We'll have, and using that, what we will do, we will go ahead and create our new image that will be output plus any other files that we need, and how do we start it, what to expose, all those things that we have to and create. So now whenever I want to do a deployment, we will just take this image and create a container, and internally you will be having your installation, which is our deployment, test and
Adam, sorry, voice breaking.
later. Hey, am I audible now?
Okay now.
All right. So what I was trying to tell is, now, once you have generated a build artifact like jar or a var, unlike the traditional method, what we are going to do is, so we are going to take the Docker image. Okay. One second. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think there was some network issue. So what I was trying to tell is, now, once we have our application generated, so how are we going to deploy? So this is where we are going to create a Docker image out of this application, whatever we have generated, which is our jar or var. And that is what we are going to basically run as a Docker container, which means our traditional deployment will be replaced with our Docker containers. So now, how do I create my Docker image? That is one question. And what are the contents of our Docker image? And using this pipeline, how is that we are going to generate? So that is the question that we have to look into one by one. So for this, first what I will do, now let me go and show you a sample Docker file. Okay. Now, what happens here is, so this is a sample Docker file using which we will be able to build our own image. Now for this, look at what I'm going to do now. Now, let's say I have a web application to deploy, like I have my var file. Now, for my var file to run, I need application server. So this is where you can take Tomcat or you can use Glassfish or JBoss. So for this example, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take JBoss. Okay. Now over here, what I'm trying to do in this example, if you see, I'm trying to take a base image, which is already available in our Docker file, which has the latest version of JBoss, which is called as Whitefly. And within this image, we also have the Java or the JDK version, which is latest. So by taking this one image as a base image, we are going to get the layers of JBoss plus the JDK, and it is also going to have a CentOS inside it together. So with this as a base image, what we will do, I'm going to add a file that is our var file. And basically, when I run this, we will be running it from the remote root directory, correct? And in that, if you see, there is a sample var folder and target, and this is the file. So basically, I want to add this to my image under this location so that when the container starts up, the script should be able to deploy the var file inside it. So that is the reason I'm trying to copy this. And post that, for JBoss to run, I'm just setting up a default username and password. And then what should be the startup command for this? So once you take this image, this will contain JBoss already available. And there is a startup script which is already available inside it. So I'm just trying to use the existing one. And I'm trying to say, just start it. So this is where now you can see we are going to take this base image and add our var file and leave this. And along with that, we don't need any environment variables for now, but when you run JBoss, it will be running on a port called 8080. So I need to expose that to 8080. Okay, so this is where now using this image, if I create a container, what will happen? We will have a container inside which our var file will be running with the help of JBoss, and that will be exposed on port 8080, which we need to map it or port mapping to a host machine's 8080, and we will be able to access this. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. Now for that, I need this image. So first I'll go to our project, and here let me go to this project. So here what I'll do, I'll create a new Docker file. Copy paste. And then let's commit. So now you can see I have all the files needed for me. So basically I have my Docker file and the build output, I will be able to get this. So now, instead of we going to a machine and running Docker build command and generating it, so we will use a pipeline which can automatically call that. Okay. Now for this, once we generate the image, so we need to push it to a Docker registry. And for our example, we are trying to use once again the Docker Hub, right? So what we are going to do now is similar to the Jenkins plugins. So we need to first install a Docker pipeline plugin, and with the help of it, we will be giving the credentials of the Docker Hub, and then we will go ahead and add it as a pipeline. So first, go back to the Jenkins and search for Docker pipeline. So go ahead and install and restart it. Okay. Now, once this gets installed, we will be having options for the Docker pipeline. Okay, so first install the Docker pipeline. The next thing, while it is getting installed, what we will do, we will add credentials of our Docker Hub. So for this, I will go to Manage Jenkins. Looks like it's restarted. Let's wait for that to be started. Yeah, looks like the Docker plugin got installed. So let's go ahead and set up a credential. Manage Jenkins, manage credentials. And here, once again, we will add a new credential. And this time we will give it a username and password. So the username and password for your Git, sorry, dockerhub.com, right? So that's what you are going to put it here. Okay, and here just Docker Hub. So we have now the Docker Hub credential, and the plugin is also installed. Then if we go back to our pipeline, so we are going to add a stage. Okay, so now watch what is the stage going to do. So once again, in this stage, we are going to the same build machine, and whether to run this or not, we are going to design with this condition. And now I'm using once again a scripted method, and over this, what we are going to do, so we are going to use a new function called Docker with registry. Okay. Now this is the registry or the function that we have got by installing the Docker pipeline. Okay. If you have not installed the pipeline, you will not get it. Now, inside that, if you look, so we are giving two options. One is what is the location or the URL of your registry. So as of now, we are using Docker Hub. And then what is the credentials that you have given? So the name here, whatever that you have given, should match with the credential that you have given here. Okay. So the ID and the ID that you give here should match, so that now when Jenkins is running this function, it knows how to connect to this Docker registry using this username and password. Okay, and inside that, what it is going to do, so basically this is equivalent of running Docker build -t and the image name. Okay, and this is the image name. Now from where will it take the Docker file? Okay, so it will take the Docker file from the default current location, that is where we have added. All right. And once it is done, the image push will automatically push this image to the Docker hub under this credential. So that's where we are using the pipeline to tell which registry, the credential, and what image to build. And by default, it will take the Docker file, which is available on the same location locally, and then it will push it. Okay. So now this is what we are going to do as a last stage for us. So if I go back to my pipeline, so you can just add a stage. And let's run. So you can see we have started with this, but anyway, it's failing. Let's just check what's the problem. So it says, I do not have permission for running Docker. So quickly to cross check, let me go to this Jenkins lib. Okay, so this is the problem. So what we have to do for this is, so say user mod A, we will add the user to this group called Docker. Okay, now post this, always switch the user and try to run once. Okay, if it doesn't happen, just log out and log in again. Okay, so you can see it ran. So what you have to do is, in case if you are not able to run Docker as a normal user, then you need to execute the command in sudo mode. That is sudo mode Docker and user name, so that it will get added. Okay, so now let's rerun. Now for this, Jenkins has already connected. So what I have to also do is disconnect the machine and reconnect. So I'll go back to this machine. Okay, and here it's already connected. So let me disconnect it and then relaunch. Okay, now once it is back, now let's try to run this. You should see now it's able to run the Docker build command, and once it is done, it will try to generate the image locally, and that it will be pushing into the Docker. You can see it's pushing. So this is where, as a pipeline, rather than you building it manually, all you have to do is have the Docker file available and use it as a pipeline stage so that Docker login happening. And then we build the image and post that. We try to do a tag and push it. Okay, so that way, now if anyone wants to download or deploy it later, we will be using it. Okay, so for example, I just want to show you. If I go back to my Docker hub, so this is the repo, and here we just updated the latest tag. So that way, you generate the image and you have to put it with respect to a particular tag. Right? So this is what you have to do. So every time now, whenever we do a build, we will be having a Docker image also generated, and that will be pushed into the registry. So you need to make sure that you have a proper tag and put it so that later on when we go to deployment, we know which build image tag that we want to download and create a container. But this is what is going to be your CI pipeline. For every change, build and add that as an image and push it. Okay. So go back and quickly try. First, make sure you are able to run the Docker daemon as a regular user and restart the Jenkins node so that it can also do it. Then install the Docker pipeline and add the credentials to the Jenkins and try to run this. Yeah, so the Docker file is also available in the same repo, and the Jenkins file I have also updated. So can you just go ahead and install the plugin and make sure you have added the credentials of your Docker Hub, and then try to run this pipeline. Can you try and check how you're going to generate a pipeline where image will be generated and it will be pushed to the repo? Can you try? Hey, have you guys tried it? Any problems? Okay, any issues? Is it working? Not working? Is everyone able to do it, or I see someone has tried? That's still working on. Has everyone completed? Any issues? Okay, then there's no questions and no updates. Then I think we're good for now. But if you have any questions, please do join. Tomorrow we'll just continue. Okay. Anyway, I'll stop the session now. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a good day, guys. Thanks for joining.